Hello, and welcome to eBacon's webinar, Work Classifications and Wage Compliance Made Easier. My name is Shauna Coronado, and I'll be your host for today's session. We're thrilled to have you join us as we delve into mastering prevailing wage compliance and simplifying wage classifications. Before we dive in, let me introduce today's presenter, Danny Goldberg. Danny is an expert in compliance and workforce management with years of experience guiding construction teams through the complexities of prevailing wage laws. At eBacon, we understand that while you focus on building America's roads, bridges, and schools, compliance shouldn't stand in your way. Our goal is to make managing classifications, wages, and payroll smoother for construction businesses like yours. In today's session, we'll cover the essentials of prevailing wage laws, common compliance hurdles and how to overcome them, and practical solutions to simplify work classifications and wage compliance. We'll also share some actionable strategies and tools to help you stay compliant, avoid penalties, and improve your payroll processes. Now, feel free to drop your questions in the question box throughout the webinar. We'll address them during the Q&A session at the end. Okay, without further ado, Danny, the stage is yours.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us and taking your time. I'll try to be brief today, but there's a lot of stuff to cover. So compliance, what a nightmare. For those of you doing prevailing wage work, you know what you have to do. For those of you just diving in for the first time, it's a lot. So you've got federal law and you've got state law that you're dealing with. Federal state compliance, and we'll talk about both of them throughout this whole entire thing. Federal laws require pretty much one document, or federal jobs, one document. State jobs can require up to 10 documents in your state on a weekly basis. The penalties are crazy. Just to kind of give you an idea, in California, non-compliance, simple fines could be up to worth $30,000. We've seen up to $6 million in fines. And I'm not talking about large companies. This is a 50-employee company that had a $2.5 million fine we uncovered last week. There's your penalties. The next issue could be if you're not complying and doing this correctly. For instance, the state of California could ban you for 3 years from doing any work in the state. Pretty much you're out of business. And the third thing we haven't seen too often, but it's kind of like your personal taxes. If you're maliciously doing things egregiously, you got problems. If you're doing bad things maliciously on these jobs, when you're filing reports, the owner's going to go to prison. It's a scary thing out there.
That is a very scary thing. Tell us more about prevailing wage and Davis-Bacon basics.
So, as you guys know or don't know, when you dive into a federal job, you're paying your guys $30 an hour to be a plumber. And all of a sudden, you got a state job or a federal job, and you could be paying these guys a $50 base rate and a $40 fringe. So now you're paying them $90 an hour for pulling out a sink in a state building versus doing it in my house. It's insane. And you got to figure out the correct way to do this and how to do it. And it is absolutely not negotiable. You can't plead, I didn't know, I didn't realize. That's where you need to have lots of people in your company checking this stuff to making sure it's right. Even the most savvy prevailing wage professional on this call right now, we've seen errors and omissions by them, not because they didn't know, just because they've been doing the same thing so long and things change. So it's always a good idea to have multiple people take a peek at this and or use software to help you manage this process.
Absolutely. Now, we're going to drop in a poll right now. We'd love for you to answer. The poll is getting worker classifications right. And so do you see the poll out there? Here we go. All right, let's have you answer the poll. And I am having trouble seeing the poll.
It's out there. I can see it.
Okay, good. All right. It is not letting me
Yeah,
in the poll.
people are responding, Shauna, to the poll. I can
Good,
see. So it's
good.
working.
Okay, good. Let's see. There we go. Okay. Now I can see the poll. Hooray. Yeah, everyone. Managing employees who switch tasks. That's a big response. And so deciding the right classification for a worker. Also very big. Okay, let me end the poll now. And we will go on to the next slide. And of course, I'm struggling with that. Here we go. There we are.
Okay, classifications, defining work roles. So what happens? I'm a laborer on a job. I have a hammer and a nail, and I'm framing. And all of a sudden, an hour or two later, I get into a machine. So now I'm an operator. So all of a sudden, I might go from a $50 base and a $40 fringe, which is $90 an hour, to a $40 base and a $25 fringe, which is $65 an hour. It, it gets very complicated to make sure that you're doing the right thing. It's getting back to the penalties and the issues and how you're filing this stuff every single week. Dual classifications are very, very tricky. And then you get into the whole class of overtime. So a guy works in 10 hours in a day. I'll use California as an example, and they're making $90 an hour for 6 hours and $70 an hour for 4 hours. How do you do overtime? What most people are doing is they're doing it totally wrong. It's called a weighted overtime. You got to think how many hours they work this job, how many hours they work in this job, do the math, and then figure out their actual overtime. We find out when we're talking to our prospects out there that that's one of the main things that they do wrong. They're classifying people wrong, and they're challenged with their overtime. It's a big deal on how to do this. And again, have multiple people look at it to double check, or use software to kind of help you figure this out. And all software is not created equal. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes.
Mhm. Dual classifications require a lot of detailed documentation. And Danny, can you give an example of how a business handled this correctly and avoided penalties?
Well, yeah, they use us. So that aside, so again, what are they doing in the field? It comes down to the workers is going to do what they do, right? The supervisor says, go do this and go do this. Your superintendent or your manager out in the field has got to understand that whatever task that they're doing, that there's a list. For instance, if you're a laborer, there's actually 10 different, I think it's level 1 through level 10. I'll use California as an example. On it could be, $75 an hour, $76.50 an hour, $77.50, whatever they're doing. And the manager almost got to have that piece of paper in front of them and saying, you're doing this now, now you're doing this, and communicate that correctly to your payroll manager or to your prevailing wage person in the office and or your compliance person to make sure it's right. This is as another example, in California, most of you guys might not know this, but you now have to pay wages to the minute. So for all you guys doing manual timesheets out there, you're not in compliance. That is a horrible thing that's going to happen. You know, there's 250,000 of us in this country that are filing our taxes right now. 250 million people that file our taxes. The chance of any of us getting audited are probably insignificant. When you're talking about companies that are doing prevailing wage jobs in this country, maybe 250 to 300,000 companies, that's a much smaller pool that are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in a year doing all this work. The chance of getting audited and getting caught is or doing something wrong is scary. So again,
Mhm.
the employee just does what they're told. The manager's got to understand something, payroll compliance, all this stuff matters to do this right. One last thing, Shauna, before we move on is in California, there's 250,000 companies that are construction companies, yet only 25,000 tackle prevailing wage work because of all the complexities that we're talking about.
It's a big challenge, clearly. What about common compliance hurdles?
So again, misclassifying penalties, back wages. Some of you guys may know what restitution is, or I made a mistake. And 6, 9, 12 months later, you get a letter in the mail or a rogue employee complains or something, what you have to do now is go back 6 months ago, and it can only be $100 in issues in wages, but you paid the wrong wages. You may have to redo the tax form, the state form, a 941, a 940, W-2s, all this mess just for misclassifying somebody or not capturing the right time. A little commercial rebaking with our system, you click a button and in 10 seconds it's done. But the point is, it's a lot of work. You can't do this. So for instance, what some people do is, remember I talked about the level 1 through level 10? Overpaying's not healthy either. So what a lot of people do is, let's say it's $70 an hour all in, or it's $84 all in. Some payroll managers will just pick the $84 level 10 and think they're helping the owner. The first thing they're doing is they're costing the owner, $11 or $12 an hour more in wages than he should be paying. So it gets really crazy and complicated. It's just, these are the pitfalls that people run into. And then all of a sudden, the fines, the penalty. We had a client that came to us about 3 months ago that had $88,000 in penalties, and we told him he was doing it wrong. No, no, thank you, no, thank you. You love your system, no, thank you. And then he called me up and he goes, I should have listened. How quickly can we get started? This happens all the time. We want you guys to build America. What you do is phenomenal. I think what we do is pretty phenomenal. We do all that back engine junk. But anyways, just project delays. By the way, and also some of you guys know the GCs have all the money, right? So if you're not in compliance with all this report, some of you might realize, why did my GC not send me the money? Because they're financially and legally responsible for everything that you do as a subcontractor. So unless you do this perfectly, why should they give you the money? Because they're going to be on the hook anyways. So again, you just got to get this process down as good as you can.
Definitely. We are going to launch another poll. If we could wave a magic wand and fix one thing in your payroll process, what would it be? What's your biggest payroll headache? Let's give you a couple minutes for everyone to start answering. Jump right in. All right. Are you seeing results? Yes, there we
Results
go.
are
There
coming
we
in now.
go.
Yeah, it takes a minute. It's delayed.
Yeah, yeah. The number one there, wow, wow. Reducing the time we spend on certified payroll reporting. It's like a
Yeah,
testimony to what you just said.
yeah. Guys, it's funny. So our clients, when you're spending 20 hours a week, it becomes 20 minutes with our system. 30 hours a week is 30 minutes, and it's compliance and it's accurate and it's correct. And again, I don't want this to make it a commercial about us, but there's a lot of stuff out there that is annoying, and we absolutely know that.
Well, let's talk about your compliance toolkit, practical solutions for that compliance.
Sure. So you got to review, you've got to talk through this, you got to ask experts, you got to talk to compliance people. Like I said, just because you've been doing this for a long time, forget about us for a minute, forget about eBacon, forget about this webinar. You just landed a prevailing wage job, and your owner says to you, figure it out. And you know what? You guys are magical, you're intuitive, and you're smart, and you figure it out. You've got a payroll company, maybe a time company, maybe some compliance. You got 8,000 Excel spreadsheets, and you hope and pray you get it right. That's kind of what you're doing, and it works, but it's slow, it's archaic, but it works. It's kind of like, if I wanted to build a building tomorrow, or if I wanted to lay some cement tomorrow, I can easily go to Home Depot, get a wheelbarrow, some concrete, some shovels, hire a few friends, and go do the same thing that maybe a cement mason does out there. And if you're doing it, you're probably laughing because it's a lot more complicated. But I can do it, and I can save a lot of money. But again, people outsource to you for a reason. People outsource to us for a reason. It's a mess out there, and we try to help.
Okay, so beyond joining eBacon, of course, uh, uh, my question for you is for businesses just starting, like in the beginning stages to address the compliance gaps. What's the first step they should really take today to get them back on the right track?
They need to call their GC and say, I need help. You hired me because I'm a great cement mason, but I'm not good with this stuff and I need your help. Talk to your GC, talk to your CPA, talk to the prevailing wage person if you have one in the office, or go to the owner and say, I don't get this. We need to have a conversation with somebody or to help. But again, I would probably start with your GC because again, your GC is going to be responsible for everything you do, payroll, taxes, reporting, everything. And they also have the money. And they are pretty skilled in this and they probably can help you, at least guide you a little bit. Not with all the complexities, but at least say, okay, I need this, this, and this is how you would do it. And I'm here to help. And that's probably the easiest thing I would probably tell you guys to do today is talk to your GC.
Great. Let's talk about compliance made more practical.
So when it says regular review project wage determination and update, so when you guys get a job, there's a lot of things going on. There's going to be a hashtag, there's going to be an asterisk, there's going to be all this stuff that's going to be code word for. There might be an increase coming on the wages that you're paying them. There might not be an increase on the wages that you're paying them, and or you might need an apprentice on this job. And again, that brings more complexity into this thing. So that's why you got to review all this stuff and make sure that it's accurate and correct. I've seen some crazy Excel spreadsheets that say, okay, they're increasing it from $30.22 to $34.50 on July 1st. And that person happens to be on a cruise that week. And all of a sudden, you didn't pay the right amount and you're filing documents with the wrong amount. That's not good. So again, you've got to stay organized. You got to understand the process at hand. And it really becomes a full-time job to do this accurately.
Without a doubt. So let's talk about a few of the key takeaways. You've really talked about confidence and managing prevailing wage and Davis-Bacon compliance, tools and tips to simplify work classifications, and audit-ready processes to protect your business. But what else do you have to add that might be very helpful for our listeners today?
You just have to pay attention. For instance, the document, the WH 347 was just rolled out and now it's 2 pages. It's not one. And on the back of it, you need to start filling out your apprentices, your jobs, the hours tracked. Are you guys using a bona fide fringe trust? Are you not? And if you are, you've got to list all this stuff. Again, more complexity. You can't start sending in the old one anymore. Those are fines and penalties that are going to rack up. They want the new one. And again, it's all the nuances of what goes on. Again, guys, we're dealing with the federal government or the state governments. And it's just a whirlwind out there of complexity. In some states are more difficult to deal with. California, Washington, Oregon tend to just have a ton of compliance and a ton of regulations. States like Arizona, Texas, and Florida, it's one document. It's easy. It's just it's who's running the states and what they expect and what they want, and it gets a little bit crazy. But you guys know this. Some of the states that we're in is just it's like, how do we even make a living in this state? It's crazy what I have to do. It's all compliance, 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 report, report, report. But I wish I had the silver bullet to tell you besides hire us or consider talking to us. But I know that. Sorry, I hate to do that during these webinars. But it is crazy out there. And we always wish people the best of luck on doing this because sometimes it is luck, sometimes it's smart, sometimes it's a combination of both. But just confirm everything, have somebody else at the company look at it. You got to get it done timely. Because there is, by the way, the good news is, and you guys all know this, even during COVID, a lot of construction companies prospered. Construction wasn't shut down. You're outside, you're working, and there's hundreds of billions of dollars in almost every state that go unclaimed or unused on doing potholes and buildings and paintings and everything federal or state. So there's a lot of money out there, and the good news is the government does pay. You just got to make sure you're doing it right so you don't get clipped on the back end.
Makes a lot of sense. And we've done a great job today, and we're going to move on to some Q&A. But before we get there, we have one last poll. We help construction companies make sure they're all Davis-Bacon compliant. So we want to find out if you'd like to have a free check. We can help you out. And if this is something you're interested, please respond to our poll. And I'll share the poll, let everyone know when the numbers come up here. It takes a little bit of a delay for me to see them. And as soon as the numbers come, I'll share it with everyone. And then we'll move on to Q&A. So if you can have your questions, if you have a few questions, put it over in the questions area on the side. Wow. Okay. This
Hey,
is really good. Let me
Donna,
share the results here.
can I interrupt for one thing real quick, guys?
Yeah.
This isn't a commercial for us. It's just we talk to a lot. By the way, we're not for everybody. And we talk to a lot of people that say, we're good, we've got it covered. And a year or two later, those are the companies that end up joining us. It never hurts when you feel like you're doing great and things are perfect. Why not use us as a stalking horse and just talk to us for 20 or 30 minutes and see if there's things we can point out? We might, for instance, I don't know if you guys know what a bona fide fringe trust is, but it basically, again, they're not all created equal. On our trust, employees get their money every week, but an owner is going to save workers' compensation, general liability, Social Security, and Medicare. So in the state of California, it's about 15 to 18% of $30, $40, and $50 an hour. That is a significant amount of money right back into your pocket. And again, so everything's unique and different out there. And just make sure you should all be using a bona fide fringe trust. Don't be afraid of them. And again, I'll give it back to
Oh,
Shauna.
well, Danny, we have a question from Ed. He says, can you review weighted average overtime?
So when you're paying somebody $70, again, we'll use a state where overtime is calculated in a day because it makes more sense. So I'm paying a guy $50. I use the full thing, $70 an hour on one job, whatever they're doing, and then it's $85 an hour on the next job that they're doing the same day. So all of a sudden, they're working 10 hours in that day. And what a lot of owners do is, let's say the $70 an hour is 8 hours. Make this real simple. And the $85 is 2 hours of overtime. Then what an owner will do, or a company do, they'll just pay that person time and a half on the $85, which is $170 an hour. That's not right. You got to say, okay, I worked 8 hours at $70. I worked 2 hours at $85. Do that math and come up with a rate and then pay that the overtime rate. But where it gets complicated is, again, in California, you got to pay by the minute. So I worked 3 hours and 22 minutes at $70 an hour. I worked 6 hours and 17 minutes at $85 an hour and 1 hour at $90 an hour. Now sit there with a calculator and Excel and your Hewlett Packard and figure that thing out. That's the correct way to do it. Use a software company that can handle it. It's a click of a button. If not, you're out of compliance.
Okay, we have another question. This one is from Amy. Thanks for your questions, by the way. What happens when you don't request an apprentice in time? We had a scenario where we didn't get notified by the contractor that we needed apprentices, and after we did the job, they were requiring the DS 140 and DAS 142.
Yeah, so the biggest reason for fines and penalties in the state of California, which is that's the document, you have to fill out a DAS 140 10 days prior, and a DAS 142 bringing the apprentice to the job 3 days prior. Ignorance is no excuse of the law. You accepted a prevailing wage job. You get the big thick document from your GC. It's all in there. The ultimate responsibility is yours to do this. It doesn't matter that he didn't tell me or she didn't tell me. If you're the sub and you've accepted the job, it's your responsibility to make sure this all gets done and it's timely. That is, we work with a compliance company in California called PWCA, and one of the attorneys, the attorney owns the practice, a good friend of mine, and he says on his desk today he's got over 100 fines and penalties for non-compliance of DAS 140 and 142. The
Wow.
lowest fine is $100,000,
Wow.
which is about a 6-man company, and the biggest fine is $12 million, just an 80-employee company. That's the insanity of this, because they just decided never to do it for the last 9 years. They just said, nah, I don't want apprentices. I'm not doing it. I'm not helping. Well, per day, $150 a day per person, but it adds up to lots of money over time.
It does. We have a question from Laura. Laura says, how do you know if you have been given a prevailing wage project? Would you have to be a vendor for a government entity prior?
No, you're required on all states or federally to file a license. I think it's $400 or $500 annually to just have the ability to work on these jobs. And if once you have that license, if you will, or that permit, you can do as long as you're equipped. If you're a cement mason and you hook up with a couple of GCs, you can absolutely do any kind of work anywhere you like. Again,
I
it's a
think that,
skill. You have
yes.
you got the subcontractors of the world build the United States. You're the
Mhm.
skilled laborers. You got it. And again, the GCs are kind of like, well, it starts with the job owner. The city of San Diego wants to rebuild a stadium or a building or schools. They're the ones that own the job. Then they get the GCs to bid on the job. They win the jobs, and they go out to all their subs and say, okay, build this. That's kind of how this whole process works.
We have a couple more questions. Paula asks, can fringes be offset?
Yes, you can take credits on your fringes. Again, it's a complicated thing. I don't want to get into it right now because I'm going to bore you guys with math. But the easiest to take is health insurance. The complexity is 401k and PTO, which gets very complicated. Most companies don't take credits on that because they can't figure it out. But
Mhm.
the health is the easiest thing to figure out. Yes, you can take credits on those.
I'm going to keep going. We might push a little bit over our 30-minute close time, but I think these questions are really good. So I wanted to have you continue to answer them. Amy asks, do you have to request apprentices for federal jobs or is it job state jobs?
No, for federal and state jobs, once you get the job, you'll see a pound sign that's going to basically say that the job is apprenticeable, and you have to do it. Think about it this way. So again, I'm not going to get into the whole union thing and all this kind of stuff, but apprentices are not journeymen. Journeymen are 2,000 or 3,000 hours of work. They're the senior guys who know how to be an electrician. And then there's me, who I've never been an electrician. I've got to have 2,000 or 3,000 hours before I can become a journeyman. So if they're apprenticeable jobs, are jobs like carpentry, electrician, plumbing. What's not apprenticeable, if I'm in a big, huge crane and it's a one seater, well, there's nobody that can sit next to me to learn. So that's not an apprenticeable job. But if it's a job that's going to state it right on to the wage determination and you have no choice but to hire an apprentice and make sure the ratios are always a 5-to-1 ratio, the hours worked, again, all this complexity that you have to do, there is no choice.
Okay. Patricia asks, where do I find the wage rates for a Davis-Bacon job?
So on a federal job, you can go online. On a state job, you can go online. You can go CA. I think it's on Google. It's California wage determination would give you the state, and the same federal determinations on Google for the federal job. But then it gets complicated, like we talked about. Okay, is it a state job? What county? What zip code are you in? You got to go through this whole litany of things to find your laborer, and then you got to figure out. Then it's going to have little sentences or paragraphs on what they're actually doing on that job, and you got to make sure that if I'm of a hammer, I'm on a frame, that's what I'm doing. Then you use level 6. So it takes you a minute to get there, but that's what you use. But if they're doing something different, you better make sure you're paying them the right wages. For instance, when I keep saying you better, the state of California actually has photographers on staff that go around to all these job sites. And these aren't just monster job sites, they take pictures. So as you guys file the 131, if you're familiar with that form in California, as you file it, they might say, okay, well, the picture says you did this, you underpaid, you overpaid. So now we got to figure this out. Now you got to make restitution and make it right and refile all those reports, and there might be penalties on top of that. So
Good.
everybody's watching. It's a mess.
There's one last question, so we'll end after this. Inez asks, our prevailing employees are eligible for company holiday and vacation pay. Do we still need to pay them the vacation fringe?
Hey, okay, so this gets into double paying. And again, this is probably not the right venue for this, but what a lot of people are doing wrong in prevailing wage world is, let me use the vacation. You're paying me vacation, and then you're paying me vacation on my fringes, and then you're paying me vacation to go away. And there's all these buckets, right? There's vacation, there's PTO, there's pension. So let's say it all adds up to $30 an hour. So you're giving your employees $30 an hour every week in cash, as it's called, and they go on vacation, then you're paying them again. We already paid them. That's called double paying. That's not good. Owner, if I was an owner company, I found out I was doing that, I would. You guys are in very low margin businesses. Every penny makes a difference. So again, I don't want to bore you with all the complications, but you are. It's like one last thing. It's like health insurance. If the bucket is $5 an hour for health insurance, you take $5 an hour times 2080, which is $1,000 divided by 12, and that gives you how much you're paying the employee monthly. On the fringes, you're giving them cash. And now you're also paying $500 a month for their health insurance. That's insane. You're double paying them, and you should not be doing that. We'd love to talk to you guys about that more. Don't want to bore you guys. Again, this
Wait,
stuff gets very complicated.
and I have to tell you, there's two more questions, and they're really good. So I'm gonna throw them at you, Danny. You have
Okay,
been
go.
rocking
Okay, we're
this.
good. Let's go.
Okay, the
Yeah.
one is from Michelle. She says, apprentices, are there exemptions for specialized work? So for apprentices, are there
Yeah. So
exemptions?
what? Yeah. So you're if it's an apprenticeable job, like we talked about earlier, it's that hashtag by the wage determination. You're required to file a DAS 140 10 days once you get the job 10 days prior. 10 days, 10 days, sorry. If the job is not an apprenticeable job, I mean, if there's not if it's a Boilermaker, Boilermaker, there's no apprentice for a Boilermaker, but you still are required to send it in. And when you fill out the 142, which is requesting bring the apprentice to the job, and there's nothing, you've fulfilled your obligation to the state of California. You've done what you need to do. But yes, there are jobs where there just won't be apprentices. But don't just assume there's not. Fill out the 140, the 142. And by the way, even if it is an apprenticeable job and you need 7 apprentices as this job tomorrow, you've done your 140 10 days ago, your 143, the 142 3 days ago, and only 2 apprentices show up, you're fine.
Mhm.
So as long as you have the proof that you did this.
There you go. So our last question now is Monica. Monica asks, for state-funded projects that are contracted through GC, is the prevailing wage sheet fixed at the time of contract date, or should we keep track of updated rates?
So again, remember we talked about the 1 asterisk or the 2 asterisk by the wage determination. A 1 asterisk means there's going to be no rate increase at all. A double asterisk means there will be a rate increase, and it will give you July 1st, December 15th. It'll just kind of give you all these weird things. Now, this is non-union speak. If it's union speak, there's a very good chance that whatever that rate is, a $50 base and a $30 fringe, $80 an hour starting today, as long as you're on that job 2, 3, 4 years, you're building a new football stadium arena in your city. It's going to be that $80, $90 an hour for the life of that job. So again, it gets complicated. Unions have their own rules, non-union, at 1 asterisk or 2 asterisks. And again, you better make sure. And here's the other complicated thing. Let's say July 1st it's going from $30 an hour in fringe to $32.50 an hour. And it's a Wednesday, and you cut off payroll on Friday. Well, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm sorry, you cut off payroll on the 1st. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is the $30 an hour, and then the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd is $32.50 an hour. You got to make sure you do that correctly and right, because that's where problems come in 1, 2, 3 years later. It's a bear.
Oh, it sounds horrible. Thank you for your amazing answers, Danny. You really got everyone taken care of. And we want to schedule time with you, but we're going to do that after our event. Really, thank you all for joining us today. And special thanks to Danny. You know all the things, Danny. So it's awesome. We hope you found this session valuable and gain insights to help simplify your work classifications and wage compliance efforts. And we want to learn more, or if you want to learn more about how eBacon can help your business navigate prevailing wage requirements, no problem. Our experts will reach out to you soon to touch base because we want to learn more about you. Finally, keep an eye on your inbox. We'll send you a recording of today's session along with additional free resources to help you master compliance. Have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.